Hi everyone, welcome into this week's My Weekly CBS Fix. This week's video is dedicated in honor of Rabbi Akiva Pollack and his wife who had a baby boy, Mazel Tov. May you raise him to be a Ben Torah, a leader in Klal Yisrael. And it's also a schos, a merit for Refuah Shlema for Yisrael Amichai Ben Sarah. The holiday of Passover is quickly approaching tomorrow evening, and just some thoughts on Passover. Our sages tell us, "B'chol dar v'dar," in each and every generation, "Chayv adam liras es atma." A person has to see himself kilu hu yatz mitzrayim, as if he himself exited Egypt. So the simple explanation of that is that we always have to be aware in our connection with Hashem, our debt of gratitude towards Him, as if we went out of Egypt ourselves. We were there, our souls were there. We have to always keep that in mind. And we also always have to remember our debt of gratitude to Hashem and all the mitzvahs that He does for us, that He commands us to do, is to strengthen our relationship with Him, which is all based on the exodus of going out of Egypt. Not all of them, but most of them were. A lot of the important ones certainly highlight that. But in a slightly different vein, I also want to share with you a different idea. A person has to always see himself as if he left Egypt. What does that mean? That means today, in today's generation, we also have to leave Egypt. What does that mean, leaving Egypt? We have to leave the cultural ideas that Egypt have, and we have to leave the service ideas that Egypt had. Now, Egypt, their service was completely denying God's existence. As a matter of fact, the first of the 10 plagues, the plague of blood, where all the water turned to blood, Hashem first struck their God. Who did they deify? They deified the Nile River. And in that region, in Egypt, rain doesn't fall. If it does, it's very rare. And therefore, they looked at the Nile River as their source of blessing. And when Hashem attacks a country, he attacks their source first. Now, when they're constantly looking down at the earthly Nile, they're never looking up to the heavens for the rain because the rains don't fall. And it's not just a coincidence that they're looking down at the Nile. The reason it's like that is because the land was like that. The people of the land were like that. They were people that were constantly looking down, and Hashem didn't cause it to rain there because there's nobody looking up for rain. There's nobody praying for rain. They think that they have everything that they need right over here in the materialistic Nile that they lived in. And therefore, the fact that there was a God that controls the entire universe, and certainly the rains, that they were completely disassociated from. And that is an obligation upon us. We have to get out of that mindset and realize that every single thing that happens in our life is governed by God. Why? Not because we're not in control, but rather because He wants to be in control, because He wants to provide, and He wants us to realize that He is the one that's providing. And we have to realize it's a great benefit that Hashem does that for us. When people think that they're in control, and like lately, somebody blamed the Jews for being in control of the weather. No, we're not in control of the weather. God's in control of the weather. But the more we pray to God for good weather or for good rain, He will certainly send it, as the verse clearly states. And so therefore, we have to get out of that mindset. The other mindset that we have to go out, which we have to get out of our minds, which is definitely the idea of why we have to eat matzah. We have to unleaven our minds. Leaven, the difference between leavened bread and unleavened bread, or between bread and matzah, is extras. Get a little extra time, a little extra ingredients. We have to do away with that. It's usually summed up as in luxuries. People have already convinced themselves that they need this, they need that, they have to have this, they have to have that. And the truth is that it's really a recipe for a downfall, because whatever it is that you approach, you're already expecting a certain high standard. And when you don't get that standard, you already want to turn your back on it. And as a matter of fact, for example, even in a marriage, many men are deluded into thinking that they're going to get Miss Perfect. And if they're not going to get Miss Perfect, they'll get Miss Near Perfect. And the truth is that as much as we think our wives are perfect, and we should, but at the same time, we have to also realize that there are imperfections that our wives or our husbands will have as well. If a person thinks that everything is going to be perfect, that's when he or she is in for a disappointment. life is not about everything being perfect. You don't need to have the extras and everything. And that's why the divorce rate is becoming so high, because people have associated their mindset with everything has to be perfect and everything has to be exactly how I want it to be. And therefore, it's the same thing with other relationships as well. Everything's got to be perfect. You got to get that from that friend. You got to have that from that friend. And anything that you do, business, you want to make X amount of it, you must make $1 million. And if you don't make $1 million, you are a failure. And that's not true. It's just not the way it is. Your money is up to Hashem as well. You got to do what you have to do. But you have to expect these failings. And the cultural mindset that the Egyptians had was more and more. And we have to get out of that. And therefore, we go back to matzah. Matzah is just basics, flour and water. And therefore, we have to realize that life is also about flour and water. As a matter of fact, the basics thing that we have to do in this world is learn Torah. And our Mishnah teaches us that really a person should eat bread with water and salt. And what does that mean? Pas b'melach tocha, bread with salt you should eat. That means even though there are such a thing as other luxuries, but it's worth it to give up all of them and only eat bread with salt just to be able to learn Torah. If that's the only way to get to Torah, you should do that. And so therefore, that's a Torah mindset, and it's an anti-Egyptian mindset, and in a certain sense, it's an anti-Western culture mindset. You don't need everything to serve Hashem. The simple basics of bread and water, of flour and water rather, are just good enough. And so therefore, we have to change our entire mindset. We have to get out of our mindset and out of the Egyptian mindset and thinking that we are in control, rather Hashem is in control. We also have to get out of the mindset and think we need this, we need that. If we don't have it, I don't know what I'm going to do with my life. I have to have it. No, the more you train yourself to be happy with less, the happier of a person you'll become. That's the truth. And so therefore, this Pesach, as you're eating your matzah, and as you're going through the Seder, try to think to yourself, oh, lachma anya, this is the bread of the poor person. Who's the poor person? The poor person sometimes could be us. I don't need so much. I have a poor mindset. I'm good. I'm happy with what I have. I don't need extras. And so therefore, when that is an obligation for us to think about that on Passover, I wish you a sweet Passover. Don't let this Passover pass over, but rather utilize the Passover, come back to basics. That's what we do. It's not just with food. It's also what we're thinking about, how we were created as a nation, as a people. We come back to basics. One of those basics, of course, is asking many questions. Ask as many questions. If children ask questions, answer them as much as you can, because when we boil it down to basics, that's what everybody wants, no matter who they are, if they're wealthy or poor. People have the same questions. So get those questions answered. Get out of the Egyptian mindset into a Torah mindset. Have a wonderful, wonderful holiday. I will talk to you soon. Thank you for listening.